Well, we're going to begin, and there may be others who are joining us. If not, they're going to be able to get a lot of good information from us, I'm sure. Um, my name is Paul Mack, and I'm the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Association for Middle Level Education and PAMLE, along with Eastern University as our host. We're just delighted to have you here and to join us in our webinar series. Tonight, we're going to be talking a little bit about finishing the year strong and celebrating our achievements in our schools. And this is going to be a conversation session. So we're really excited about sharing our ideas and hearing what you have to say. And Susie Hiley from Indiana, we are so happy to have you here. I don't know if you can hear us yet, but we're going to get started right now. It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this evening. You see, I changed that up a little bit, Gail. Gail Heinemeyer, who is well known in both AMLE and PAMLE as a strong leader. So Gail, I'm going to turn it over to you at this time.
Okay, well, thank you, Paul. And as Paul said, we've kind of designed tonight to really be an open discussion, sort of modeled, if any of you have been familiar with MS Chat, which was something that was generally done via Twitter, where a question was posted and then people responded to it. And so we've sort of adopted that model for this evening and have 5 questions that we want to look at and potentially share some ideas for what it is that people are doing in their schools or things that they know of that other schools do, so that we can get some good ideas for how we can not only finish this year strong, but take the time to celebrate what the achievements are that we have had throughout the year. So Julie, Ian, and Susie, if you want to start, and could you just introduce yourselves and give us a sense of who you are and what your role is? So Ian, can we start with you?
Absolutely. My name is my camera up or no? I just wanted to check.
Name. I just have we have your name.
Okay. I will work on that and I will work on getting my face up.
Okay.
But my name is Ian Petrillo. I am finishing up my 3rd year teaching at Mechanicsburg Area Middle School. I am also the upcoming treasurer for PAMLE as well. So I work alongside Paul. And I'm happy to be here tonight and hear how we're celebrating some of our student achievements and also teacher achievements.
Thank you. Well, we're glad to have you. And Julie, how about you?
My name is Julie DiDotta. I teach at Conrad Weiser Area School District, which is up in Berks County. Okay. And yeah, it's just been a crazy school year, and we're so close to the end, but it doesn't feel like we are just there yet. So it'll be good to, pardon?
It's in sight.
It's in sight. Yes. The horizon is getting closer. Yes. So, yeah, no, but thank you for having this event tonight. And I'm enjoying all the webinars that you folks have been offering. So thank you.
Well, good. We appreciate that. And to show that we are very inclusive, we even let people from other states join us. So Susan, can you give us a little bit of information about who you are and what you do? Okay, I think you there we go.
Now I'm unmuted. Thank you. Yeah, I work with the Indiana Middle Level Association. I thought the idea for this webinar was great, and I would like to do this. I think I want to do this for our Indiana Middle Level schools too. Our state testing started yesterday, so this would not be the optimum time, but I love the people from Pennsylvania. I've been to your schools to watch training. I love to hang out with them in conferences. So I thought this was a wonderful idea.
Okay, well, we're glad you can join us and perhaps share some things that are going on out there in Indiana as well. So when we start to talk about finishing the year strong, starting strong is good. And we always want to get that school year off to a great start. And we have a lot of enthusiasm and people are ready to go and anxious to welcome back the kids and new members to the staff. And then you kind of go through those inevitable peaks and valleys of any traditional school year. And you get to this point, spring vacation is behind you. Standardized testing is either in the midst of or in front of you. And it's, how do I keep this going? How do we finish strong and get ourselves to the end of the school year and hopefully feel as good about the end as we did about the beginning. So the first question that I want to pose, and as I said, we just want to kind of take turns with sharing some of the ideas and things that you do. Once standardized testing is finished, I think students often get the impression that, okay, we're done. I don't have to do anything more. We got to the test. That's finished with, and we've, submitted ourselves to the, in Pennsylvania, it stretches out over probably about a 3-week time frame. So it gets you somewhere into May, but yeah, we're still in school till the second week in June. So how do you keep the enthusiasm? How do you keep kids engaged? What do you do to motivate kids and keep them going until the end of your school year? Don't all answer at once.
Hey, so this is Ian Petrillo. I think one of the, if you hear jingling in the background, that's my dog. He just has the zoomies at the moment. So if he's running around, you hear jingling, that's what's going on.
Okay.
So I think one of the biggest things that I do to keep the motivation of my students going is just making sure that relationship and that they understand that we're kind of in their corner still. Like, we understand, as teachers, we're looking forward to summer as well. Like, it's a time for us to replenish and relax, but to let them know that we're not done yet, because we have more, I like to say that we're building people skills, and we're building skills needed for the future, that we keep rocking and rolling, because as people, we keep developing our skills even as adults. And so being as real with them and just making it as relevant as possible, it's one of the huge things that I do to make sure my students are, still excited to come into the classroom, still excited to, be there and to learn.
Absolutely. Great. How about you, Julie? What happens in your building?
I was going to say, just having some of those really high interest projects on hand is really helpful. Just keeping things that I mean, we do that all the time. I know it sounds ridiculous, but at the same time, like, there are some projects that I know students really, really get into, and kind of holding them back a little bit for this time of the year is super helpful. So to increase engagement, have a little bit more fun, and keep that interest there. Yeah, it's a struggle sometimes for sure, but yeah, giving those student-led projects, I think, is a big help too.
Okay. And how, Susie, anything that happens in Indiana that is interesting or unique out there?
Not that I can think of statewide, although we have, believe it or not, with the Indy 500, there are a lot of cool field trips involved with that.
Oh, okay.
So, and some of them are aimed at middle school, but I don't know. I can't think of anything statewide, but I totally agree. Save some of your most fun experiments, projects. So often leave the kids with the feeling that, my gosh, this class was like my favorite ever. And you have a little bit more liberty after testing's over.
Right. I think that's one of the things that you kind of say, okay, there's a little bit more freedom now. I'm not pushing towards that test. Now might be an opportunity where I can be a little bit more creative. I can do some more things that are more hands-on with the kids. I was doing a virtual visit with a school in Illinois yesterday, and listening to one of the teachers who started off by telling me she was 3 years from retirement, but she has totally redesigned everything she does in her classroom and taken away from where it used to be 90% her and 10% kid. She's flipped that totally. And I think that's one of the ways that we're kind of keeping those kids engaged, that they are not sitting listening to us doing the talking or taking notes or whatever, but they are actively engaged. So designing some of those real fun collaborative types of projects where the kids may not even realize they're learning, but they are developing those kind of skills and things, Ian, that you talked about, like the idea that, we're still laying a foundation for you to be successful as you move on.
Yeah, Gail, I'm always looking as go out into schools to see what kinds of things they're doing that are unique. And this is one of the things that I found. I think it might have been 2 years ago, and I was in a school and we were talking about some of the unique things they do. And it came up at the end of the year, interestingly enough. And they said they keep the last month of school open for student-led projects. As a matter of fact, focusing on student interest. So it wouldn't have to be a project for the whole group. It could be actually a research or something that a student wanted to explore further. And that's the way they handled that last month of school. And it was just fascinating, the kinds of things that they came up with, the things that the kids learned, and then the way they shared out what they came up with. It was really interesting.
One of the things that we used to do was a program that we called Ask the Expert. And the idea was that each of the kids came up with some topic that they wanted to explore a little bit more in depth. And then they had the opportunity to use their research skills, and times have changed from when we first started doing that, and they would come up, with their display board and have their stuff. Now they come in with their PowerPoint presentations and their videos and all kinds of things. But it's a great way to be able, if you can restructure that time and allow them to have that opportunity to explore some things that really are key to them, because you're addressing then their needs and keeping them interested because it's something they want to know about. And then they have the opportunity, as Ask the Expert, to do an expo. We do it in our boardroom. All the kids are there in that particular group, and then the parents are invited so that they get to demonstrate their learning and what it is that they have done, which kind of leads me into, whoops, fingers got carried away. The second question. When you're reaching the end of the year and you're looking at those assessments, I know oftentimes there is a debate at middle level as to whether or not we continue with the process of the dreaded final exam, where there was some cumulative exam that was given at the end of the year, and it was like life or death, and that depended on whether or not you passed the class. Hopefully we've moved away from a lot of that, but how do you have your students kind of demonstrate at the end of the year what they have learned throughout the year? What's their culminating project, or the way in which they kind of demonstrate to you that they have in fact mastered the skills and the knowledge that you wanted them to have?
That isn't, yeah, we're not so focused on a final exam.
Good.
But we also, yeah, but we also aren't so focused on a final project, but probably just more informally, just that end of the year time is really special, and students tend to, they're heading off to like the junior high, and they're a bit, they feel like they're the big fish on campus, but that, to mix some metaphors there, but they also are a little bit afraid to move on. And so I think just spending time talking with students and those relationships, that's where I notice it, to piggyback on what Ian was saying, like just spending some time with students and them, and they tell me about how their year was. So I think that isn't really something we look at in a more formal sense, but yeah, maybe we should.
Well, and it could also be a great opportunity to do some student-led conferencing and set up that time where you're going to flip the parent conference, and the parents come in and the students are really going to lead them through what it is that they have learned through the year. So that's kind of a way and that could be tied into whatever their project was, but something then that they're allowed to be able to demonstrate to their parents. Hey, this is what I did this year. These are the things that I've learned, what I've grown, what are the things that I'm going to take with me as I'm moving to whatever the next level might be. Ian, anything that you would add into that mix?
So the number one thing that I have kind of taken over, starting to teach at Mechanicsburg, because this is only my third year.
Okay.
The number one thing that we have found as, 8th grade science people is that whenever we give the students choice in what they want to do, either whether it's the last week, last 2 weeks, we have found that allowing them to revisit some of the, I'm going to say the fan favorites. That's what they call them, the fan favorite labs, or the fan favorite activities. And we have them give us feedback and tell us, hey, to even make this project even better than what it was, or how would you design this to make it better student-centered? we run a lot of activities where we almost give them the reins, where they're the teacher for the last week or two, where they get to pick certain labs, test them out again, say, oh, it would be really cool if you did X, Y, and Z. And so it shows that they have picked up, our transfer goals and those skills that they need to become better people, but better, scientists, whether they say, you know what, this problem isn't specific enough. You could design it in this way, or, hey, why don't you change directions and ask students this? So having the students have the reins and the choices has definitely done us well and has allowed us to actually make our labs even better than what they were before.
Oh, and absolutely. And allowing that student choice is so valuable because they appreciate the fact that their voice is heard, that they can make some contributions and have some control over their own learning. So that's a great opportunity. Paul, anything that you would add into that?
Yeah, a couple of ideas that we've used over the years, over a lot of years. Number one, I think that reflection is so important. And if students are really involved in their own learning, then they should also be carefully involved in goal setting. So reviewing goals that they have established over the course of the year, and then reflecting on how well they have been able to, or what kind of achievement they have actually reached in those goals. And if we're talking about their learning of curriculum, then it could be unique to every class that they had, that there might have been specific goals there. But also the reflection piece, I think, is so important. A lot of times writing is a key element within a school or within a grade level, sometimes all grade levels. And being able to articulate in written form what they have learned, what kind of achievements that they have made, what they've enjoyed, true reflection of their work over the course of the year. When they talk about choosing the Final Four for the NCAA football championship, or who's going to go to the NCAA basketball tournament, they often talk about the whole body of work. And I think it's something that is overlooked sometimes. You don't give kids a chance to talk about the whole body of work and what was meaningful to them and what they really got out of it. And I think this is a good way to do that.
And I think one of the things that you can incorporate that is almost doing an exit interview with each kid. If you've had them at the beginning of the year, set what some of their goals are for the course of the year. And then, as Paul said, that reflection piece is so important, and do that one-on-one exit interview with them. So before they're, if you have kids involved, let's say that they're working on their individual projects, that's a great time as a classroom teacher to pull a kid aside and let's go back and look at the goals that you had for yourself for this school year. Where are we on all of those? Can you rate yourself? Do you feel, what do you need to improve? So really conduct an exit interview with them, and they're going to be able to tell you what they thought they mastered, what maybe they feel a little uncertain about. And particularly if they're in a situation where they're leaving your building and moving on to the next, that's another good opportunity to kind of get from them, what kind of concerns do you have about going to the next level? Susie,
I
anything?
want to add, I was going to add that having the kids reflect at the end of the year was really helpful to me too. When I was teaching science, I would ask, what lab was like your favorite, or what chapter was your favorite, or kind of like when you were letting kids pick and redo a lab. It surprised me because so many different kids picked so many different things. So it reinforced to me that different lessons meant something to different kids. And it really surprised me sometimes. Like, I like this lab because, I like this activity because, and it really helped me plan for the next year.
Sure. And I think it would also be interesting to do it from the opposite perspective. Which lab didn't I like, and why didn't I like it? And how could that have changed that I might have enjoyed it more? So I think you can get a lot of good information that way. Talking, it's kind of doing the customer satisfaction survey. How did things go? All right, so let's take ourselves over to the next question. So we're going to assume that we do have students that have accomplished a lot at the course of the year. And I actually should have adjusted this question to say, celebrate student and staff achievement, because it's an appropriate time to do that as well. So what are some things that you do at the end of the year that you celebrate student achievement over the course of the year?
So I know for my district, something that we do as a team is that we have our whole entire team. We rent out the auditorium and we take them down. We kind of do, student achievements, and we try to come up with, an achievement, not necessarily that's academic based, but just, whether that's personality, whether that's, characteristics of what they've done in and out of the classroom. But we try to come up with this award ceremony, and almost this day we're the Pathfinder team. So we like to call it a Pathfinder Pride Day, where we give the students almost, I'm going to say day and a half of just them to kind of reflect and to be like, what, we did make it through this year. And, last year kind of hit home for our team because it was the first full year with COVID going on, that we had a lot of emotional students who, made it through the year and they were not ready. They said they were not ready for high school, but we know deep down they were ready for high school. They just didn't want to leave because they had such an awesome year. But just being able to celebrate everything that you've achieved that year, because every year is going to be difficult, regardless of, whether it was a COVID year, whether it's just regardless trying to, make it through the year. Because we all have those students who, quote unquote, do not like school, but we know deep down that they really enjoy it and they're really going to miss it.
Julie, anything special that happens there at Conrad Weiss?
No, we do some similar things to that for sure. But I also like doing that with my students because, you have your own little community as well. And, just kind of reliving some of the highlights and some of the kind of like the inside jokes that you have with your class. So I think we spend a lot of time doing that and just celebrating ourselves in our own little community, because a lot of those kids can sometimes get lost in the shuffle when you're looking at the whole grade level, or like, just 4, 5, 6 or 5, 6, something like that. So, yeah.
Well, Julie, I think you just hit on something that I feel is critical, and that's the idea that some kids get lost in the shuffle. And one of the things that we always did was to have a celebration of every child. So there were always little mini stories and perhaps high achievements. Perhaps it was personal best, but there was something about every child that was shared and openly shared across the grade level. So that was really a pretty cool thing to do, and a way to help them to feel good about themselves and to recall things that they had done well.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot because, when I was in high school, I wasn't the top of my class, but I was just below the top of my class. And sometimes I felt like, oh, I'm trying so hard, and I wasn't always getting the attention from teachers that I thought I should have. But then there were other teachers who really gave me a lot of attention and made me feel good and encouraged me to keep going. So I think, you always have those students that get a lot of attention. They always get the good grades. They're good behavior students. They're funny, but then there's that next layer down that I think, yeah, they get lost in the shuffle. And then you also have those kids who just demand a lot of attention for sometimes negative reasons. But yeah, those kids in the middle, I really feel for them sometimes and try to give them extra shine and extra attention from me. Yeah.
One of the things that we did, and I don't know whether they have continued this tradition, but we had done it for many years. It actually came, we had initially 2 junior highs in our district, and when they merged, we had to honor traditions and things that went in both places. So how did we adapt some of those things? And one of the things that we moved forward with was what we called a certificate of excellence. And this was a major production We had certificates printed that listed every subject that a student could possibly have in the course of the year. And then teachers were asked to sign those certificates if a student finished the year with an A average. So, and we're talking, classes of 450 kids, which meant there were certificates all over the place. And inevitably, there was not a kid who did not receive a certificate. Somebody was good at something. So they may not have gotten, an A in every subject, but there was that student that was good in art. There was that student that was good in phys ed. There was the student that was good in the tech ed programs. And so this was part of an assembly, and every student's name was announced. And I don't know what we were thinking. We read every subject that they had an A in. So, but we got it down to a science. This did not take us, 3 days to go through this. But it was a great way that really there was an opportunity for many students to be recognized that they had achieved, an A in one or more subjects. We also, for a period of time, did a program that we called Bugs. And what Bugs meant was bringing up grades successfully, because it was very easy to identify, and there's a lot of debate over whether or not honor roll was appropriate at middle level, and we all have our opinions on that, but again, that was a tradition that we had. But we also did Bugs, bringing up grades successfully. So we would look at students, and if they, in the course of a marking period, had been able to bring their grade up, so let's say the first semester they had a D, and the second semester they brought it up to a C, they were recognized for bringing grades up successfully. So again, that was a way you didn't have to always be getting the A, you didn't have to be the top student, but you were demonstrating your effort and you were being acknowledged for that. So I think another thing too that is helpful with particularly end of the year type programs, it's a great way to involve community partnerships. So we frequently, we were fortunate to have groups like the American Legion or the Veterans of Foreign Wars, or a credit union in the district, or a bank that would present an award. And that was often tied into a particular subject area. So it was a good way to involve community members that were supportive of what was going on in the school, and they would be invited to the assembly. They would make those presentations. Because one of the key things I think it's important in any school is to develop those school community partnerships. And this was just another way that we could kind of increase the net as to how we got people in the building so they could see what was happening and kids were receiving recognition. Anything else?
Gail, that sounds like a mammoth undertaking, 400 and some students. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, and that was just one grade. That was just, we were doing this for 3 grade.
Wow.
So, oh my God. We were fortunate. We had a team room for each grade level. So all of those certificates were printed and we had them set in envelopes. And what I actually did, just to make it a little bit easier, I printed a certificate with every kid's name on it so that the teachers didn't have to worry about the kid's name. All they had to do was sign it. So they came in with their roll book and they, could find the certificates and sign them. And they would have X number of days to be able to do that. So yeah, it was a mammoth operation. But one of the things that I always said to the kids at the first assembly that we had, and we did recognition assemblies quarterly, and I would encourage them to get themselves some sort of an album, something where they could save these certificates. They may not mean much to them now, but it's funny then, particularly as you get older and you look back and go, oh gosh, look at this perfect attendance certificate that I got. Which again was something that we changed. We used to just wait and recognize perfect attendance at the end of the year. Well, we all know it's real tough to make it to every school day. So we changed it to every 9 weeks. So if you had perfect attendance for 9 weeks, that was a little bit more of an achievable goal. And so we could recognize students for that and provide that type of positive reinforcement. So, we looked for one of the goals that we had was that in the course of the school year, every student would hear their name mentioned in a positive manner. And admittedly, that was a little bit hard for some kids, for us to find something to do, but that was really a goal that we had to make sure that they all somehow in the course of that year were receiving some recognition, which helped them to feel part of what that school community was all about. Anything else that you would add on the student side of things? because as I said, I should have phrased this question as also staff achievements. That it would be important to recognize those. So I know some buildings, they might do an end of the year luncheon, or they have an end of the year faculty meeting, or whatever it is that they do, but ways in which you recognize things that your teachers have accomplished. So if they have been a winner of a grant, and that's something I want to probe that a little bit more in a minute, they won a grant, or they completed their master's degree, or they were recognized for some volunteer work they did in the community, or whatever. It's a great way, I think, to build community among your staff as well. And one of the things that we now do as a district, and this will be our 13th annual service recognition dinner coming up. We started this program a number of years ago with the idea we were recognizing retirees from across the district. And it was not just the professional staff. It was a retiree at any level, whether you were the custodian, you were the cafeteria worker, you were the bus driver, from whatever aspect of the school. And so we started with the idea we would recognize folks who were retiring. Then we decided to expand it to milestone years of service. So any employee who reached the 5, 10, 15, 20, 25-year mark, whatever, was recognized at this service dinner. And so it's really become an established tradition in the district that people are being recognized. They're recognized collectively across the district. They get to see colleagues that they don't necessarily see on a regular basis. So it's a nice night to kind of get together and to celebrate. It's not quite at the end of the year. It's almost the end of the year, but it's a good way to recognize staff for the things that they have achieved in the course of the year as well. And I was saying before we started the webinar, one of the things I was doing this morning was playing the prize patrol. Our educational foundation runs a grant program. And this morning we went to several of the two elementaries and the middle school to make presentations of grant winners. And we're making a big deal out of that, where we had a big presentation check made. We were doing that presentation, taking a picture of that. That ultimately will be posted on our Ed Foundation Facebook page. We'll tweet that out. It'll go into the district newsletter and those types of things. So again, that's another way that the community begins to see that the achievement, it's not only just students, but our staff members have some incredible achievements as well. So are there other ways that any of you have acknowledgement of what your staff has accomplished in the course of the year?
So Gail, exactly what you just said, our district all comes together at our football field at the very end of the year, and we celebrate, the people who have been there for 5 years, for 10 years, 15,
Okay.
people who are retiring. And we do all of those things, and we also, at the end of the year, we do something called Staff Excellence Awards, and there's different categories, for professional staff, and for different areas within the professional staff that different teachers can get recognized. And so all nominations are shared, but then ultimately at the end, because that's the school board then discusses about the awards and decides, hey, who are we going to pick as our quote unquote grand winners when they have their school board meetings and so on and so forth. So then we as a whole entire district can celebrate not just building, but district as well.
Okay. We actually, we have a foundation board meeting on Thursday, and one of the ideas we're going to discuss is something that was shared with us from Methacton Education Foundation, I think it is, where the month of May is like School Appreciation Week. I know Teacher Appreciation Week is in there, but what they have done is they set this up as a fundraiser for their foundation. And so anybody can make a donation to the foundation, and they get X number of certificates for that purpose, that they can recognize anybody in the school that they want to show them their appreciation. So we'll print the certificates, and then they'll get delivered to the schools that will basically say, the Heinemeyer family has made a donation to the REF in your honor as a thank you for how you have helped their students in the course of the year. So again, another way that we're trying to create those bonds with the community, reaching out to provide some formalized process by which that our staff members, and again, that's all this, You know, it could be those folks that they'd like to thank the bus driver because the bus driver has been awesome getting their kids to and from school. So it's another venue that we wanted to set up. And I mean, I will say that we were a little greedy because it was a way for us to get some money, but it was a way to facilitate that type of a process.
Gail, I have nothing to to add to this conversation other than I'm going to steal all your ideas
Well, that's
because
okay.
I used to organize the end of the year luncheon, and we used to go to this restaurant that was just around the corner. And at the time that I was organizing it, everyone from the school could just fit into the restaurant. And then when someone from our building retired, they would want to invite their retiree friends. That's great. But then the people who actually worked that school year couldn't fit, and they felt like they weren't welcome.
Oh,
So I love this idea that the whole district comes out for all levels of service,
right.
and everyone's there. But I also really like the recognizing people who have reached those milestones. Our school district does that at the beginning of the year. That's when you get your 5-year pin, your 10-year pin.
Okay. Right.
And that's great at the beginning of the year, but there's already a lot going on. And I really like the idea of doing it at the end of the year, because I think so many teachers are they forget to enjoy that time because it is such a race and
Right.
there is a lot going on. So I'm going to just steal all your ideas,
Hey,
Gail. I love it.
But I'll tell you, I have always approached it from the standpoint of what I call the 3 S's of education: steal, share, and save. So, you know, I'll get ideas and I'll save them because I'll steal them from somebody else. But they're more than willing to share, because I think that's part of how we help one another. That, you know, our ideas are not unique to us. You know, we've taken them and put our twist on them, but then it's nice to be able to share those out with other folks and say, okay, you take that and make that your own. So
Exactly.
feel free to do whatever. And if anybody wants a copy of what the certificate looks like that we're going to do for the staff appreciation, let me know. I'd be more than happy to share that with you.
Thank you.
Let's take a look at question number 4. The end of the year rituals. What kinds of things are just part of your school tradition that you do as you approach the end of the school year? And I'll give you some examples of some things that happen well, at 2 of our levels. One of the things that is done at our elementary level is a 5th grade outdoor education program. And this has gone on for probably well over 50 years, where all of the 5th graders go to camp for 3 days. And when I was in the middle school today, one of the teachers was telling me that the 8th graders were going to camp. And I said, okay, where did that idea come about? Well, they were the 8th grade group that missed going to camp because of COVID. So the district was smart enough to realize that and to say that was an end of the year ritual in the elementary schools, and this class missed out on that. So how do we make it up to them? And that's what they're giving them a camp experience. But they also then, each of the grade levels would have like a specific special field trip. So our 8th graders go to Washington, and it's just for a day. They don't go down and stay overnight. They just go down for the day. Our 7th graders go to Hershey Park. And our 6th graders go to, well, they went to a local amusement park, which I think has since closed because it got flooded out. So I'm not sure what they've substituted that for, but that was always one of the things that kids look forward to, that they knew, oh yeah, at the end of 6th grade, we get to go do, you know, whatever. So there are ways in which they look forward to some of those things at the end of the school year that they know are going to happen. We also have an 8th grade dance, which we decided we tried very hard to change it to the idea of an 8th grade party, because at one point in time, this was more so the parents than the kids. They essentially were turning it into the senior prom. And, you know, they wanted limos and gowns and the boys with tux and whatever. And we thought, no, this is 8th grade. If you do all this now, what are you going to do for senior prom? So we do now have that end of the year. It's an 8th grade party. And we've really tried to tone it back and basically say, yeah, there's no limos and we're not looking for, you know, fancy dress. It's nice attire, but let's just come and kind of celebrate the year. So that is something that our eighth graders look forward to in terms of doing that eighth grade farewell party. We have those traditional end of the year assemblies that we all do. And then at the last assembly, one of the things that we kind of added that was sort of a neat process was the administrators actually, we don't do it as a commencement ceremony, so it's not like graduation, but kind of as a preview for kids of what to look forward to. We actually enter the auditorium in our caps and gowns to pomp and circumstance and exit the same way. So there's a little bit more an air of formality to it. And all of those things, when we do any type of those recognition assemblies, that is something where parents are always extended the invitation to come. Some do, some don't, but those who do kind of enjoy the fact that they're there and they can actually see large groups of middle level students that I'm going to say are relatively well behaved. So it's a nice celebration at the end, and just part of the way in which we want to bring that school year to end on a positive note. So what are some of the things that happen in your schools as far as the end of the year is concerned?
I know that at Mechanicsburg, we have something called Step Up, which is, kind of the celebratory event with all of our eighth graders where we announce their names. They get to walk across the stage, shake the principal's hands, and just get recognized for the fact that they made it through middle school and now are on transition to high school. But something else that we do at the end of the year, just kind of ritual wise, is something that I do in my classroom to help celebrate my students, is that I make a promise to all of my students. And what I promise them is at the very end of the year, I write a contract with them and I say, I will be at your graduation in 2025. If you're still going to Mechanicsburg, or if you're in the area and you give me the graduation date, I will be there. Because on this contract, it states where they want to see themselves, what goals that they have whenever they are getting up to the point of, leaving high school. And so I did this with some of my students from student teaching who just graduated. I went up to their graduation, and it was fun that we were looking through the binder of all their goals that they had and how they've changed, and how, some of them still have the right, or the same goal in mind. Right. So just the ritual that I had with some of those and just the relationship I built with them. But overall, just, I think all of us can agree, is just celebrating the fact that these students made it through yet another year with, education always changing and always being a little bit more difficult from year on and year on.
One of the neat things that I know that a middle school did was what they called halfway day. And so they had determined a date, which was usually in February, where a student would be halfway through their school career. So it was midway from the time you entered kindergarten until graduation. And so on halfway day, they had this celebration, and all the kids got a half of a donut. And the promise was that we would be at graduation and you got the other half of the donut. Now, of course, we didn't save donuts for 6 years, but that was, again, that's sort of an idea. So you made it to halfway day, you're halfway here, we're going to see you again at that graduation point. So just kind of a neat way that you keep those connections. And one of the things you may have noticed, that the term connection and relationship has come up several times in our discussion this evening. And that's really key to making a successful middle level program work, that there are those relationships and the connections you have with the kids. So any other rituals or things that you would share that goes on in your building that?
No, like our sixth graders go to camp as well. There are amusement park days, there are special celebrations. Every teacher kind of does their own thing, as well as the building events. So, but I was just talking to a student teacher recently, and yeah, education, we study and we do all these things and we learn about methods, but it really, at the end of the day, is a relationship job. You have relationships with all these different people to meet a common goal. So, we can talk about methods and all that. Not that we're having that discussion tonight, but yeah, relationships are so important. And I also like something that we've talked about tonight about the small milestones for kids. And I think coming back to school after COVID,
Right.
making sure that we keep those smaller milestones in mind are really that's really helpful. So
Sure.
that's all I
'Cause
have to say.
well, I think they're much more achievable and kids can see that, oh, okay, I can accomplish this. So if I get this first one, now it's easier to get to the second one. So I think those kind of things are important. I was interviewing a group of students yesterday, and they were telling me that this was the first school year now that kind of felt normal to them. They had missed one year, they had done some hybrid. This was kind of the first year that they were back from beginning to end. And I was trying to ask them about their classes and what went on in their classrooms and kind of instruction was, and they didn't want to talk about that. They wanted to talk about the relationships they had with the teachers, the opportunities that they had in their clubs and the other programs outside of the academic classroom. And I think sometimes that's one of the things that we kind of forget, that we are so focused and driven on the idea that, oh, I got to get these standards taught and whatever. But if we do spend that time on the relationship piece, and I always truly believe this, that the standards are going to come. That if you've established the relationships with the kids and they understand that you care about them, you're interested in them, you're interested in their success, they are more apt, I think, to try to please you and consequently to do the things that you need them to do in order to be able to be successful on those dreaded standardized tests.
So I want to share a couple of really quick things. One was I was in a school at the end of the year and was there for their end of the year assembly. And after the assembly was over, all the kids went outside and they gave them ice cream. And it was definitely a ritual. It was something that the kids were looking for. They were just really excited about heading outside and getting that ice cream. When the bell rang, they just all left. It was really cool because they were with their homeroom groups, with their teams, and they were there with their friends and their teachers. Very, very fun activity. Another one that was a year-end ritual that happened all the time at this school was they not only had a celebration for the teachers, they had a big picnic. And it was right at the school. Now, I think some of the participants then took it to other places, maybe by teams or by groups, whatever it might have been. But the end of the school year, the last day, was really quite a celebration for them.
Well, and that's sort of a perfect segue to the next question. What does the last year or the last day of the year look like for your students? So you picture what's going on that last day, and they've been dismissed. And how do you handle that dismissal? We always made a practice of we dismissed the 8th graders first, and then off they went, and then 7th and the 6th graders were the last to go. So we kind of had a controlled dismissal. But think about, what does it look like? Are they eagerly running out of the building because they can't wait to get out of there? Or are those kids there? Are they lingering? Do they want to hang around? And that's largely going to come back to what are the connections that they have made with the staff that's there. So what does your last day look like for students?
Hey, this was pretty cool. And I was in this school, and what they did the last day of school, the 8th graders knew that they were going to be dismissed first and early. They not only, it was not only first, but they were dismissed 15 minutes early. And what happened was all the people in the school, except for the teachers of those 8th grade homerooms or classes, wherever they were, they lined the hallway towards the entrance and exit of the school building. And all of the 8th graders came down, and there were students and faculty and other staff persons along the hallway, and they were congratulating them. Their hands were out. They had confetti that they threw. It was just the coolest thing. And that was the celebration of the 8th graders leaving the building and moving on to the high school the following year.
And I think one of the nice things, if you can arrange it, is if your staff members can walk out with the kids, and those that don't, let's say, have the homeroom responsibility or whatever that last activity is, I want to have them out there at the building kind of saying goodbye to every kid as they're going out the door. Because I want them to know that as much as we welcomed you in back in late August, we want to wish you success as you're leaving as well. So it's hard to sustain that kind of energy throughout the whole time, but it does make an impact. And those are the things then that the kids will remember. And hopefully you take comfort in the fact that you have given them the skills that they're going to need to be successful at the next level or back in your building next year if they've moved to the next grade.
I was going to say, Paul, just to piggyback off of what you said, I know at Mechanicsburg, something that we've been doing for a number of years is the second that we get every single student onto the buses, every teacher lines up outside where the buses dismiss, and every teacher lines up on both sides of the buses. So whenever the buses leave, we are all there saying goodbye, waving, wishing them a good summer, and all the students are able to, lean out the windows and say goodbye to, all their teachers as they're leaving for summer and going up to the high school, or, they'll be returning for the next year. So it's a really cool experience because you get to see these kids finally making that transition. That's us kind of giving them their last hurrah as they, leave on the bus.
And hopefully the staff members are not trying to beat the kids out of the parking lot. So,
And trust me, it's not like that. Most teachers were teary-eyed because we're just so proud of how hard these students have worked towards what they've gotten so far.
Right. So, well, and when you have that that says then a lot about the climate and the culture of your building, that, the kids felt comfortable there. It was a safe, a welcoming environment. They were able to succeed, and they know that they had adults who cared about them. So as we kind of bring this discussion to a close, I do want you to know that we are going to continue this webinar series. We have one more scheduled for this year, then we'll take a break for the summer and start them back up again in the fall. But if there is a topic or something that you would like us to address, please send us your suggestions. And we're very happy to craft something, whether it's where we actually have someone who is presenting on that particular topic, or we do as we did this evening and have that roundtable discussion, which I think it's valuable to hear what goes on in other buildings. You can get Act 48 credit for tonight. To do so, there will be an evaluation. You'll get a link for that, and we do ask that you complete that by 9 o'clock this Friday evening. Our next webinar is going to be on Tuesday, May the 16th, and we're going to talk about planning for the next year. And this is going to be a good time, I think, for us to reflect what went well this year, what do we need to change, how do we need to address things, what are the goals that we're going to set for our class, for ourselves, for our school. So we're going to think about how it is that just as we have finished strong, how do we set the tone for the strong start to that next school year? So with that in mind, I want to thank our friends from Eastern University for hosting this. I'm not sure whether we've got Diana or Kelly who's with us at the moment, but we appreciate the support that they give us to host our webinars. And I'm going to turn it back over to Paul to bring us home.
Thank you, Gail. Appreciate your moderating our session this evening. Even though we had a small group, the information is incredible. So don't hesitate to share this with your peers and let them know that this webinar will be on the website along with others that have been there in the past. So you can still get Act 48 credits for those webinars if you view them. And don't forget about our next webinar, May 16th. Pass the information along to your friends and neighbors wherever they may be. And I know we, as educators, we have them all over the place. So Julie and Ian, Diana, Kelly, and Gail, thank you so much for being here this evening. Have a great evening, and we wish you well.
And Susie, don't
Thank you.
extend
Oh,
that
and Susie.
Well, invite your other friends from Indiana. They're more than welcome to join us.
That's right. So good night. Have a
All right,
good one.
thank you, everyone.
Good
Have a
night.
Everyone have a
Thank
good
you
night.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.